I think most people just look at their partner's body as a tool to reach a certain goal, nothing beyond that.
If she's stressed the whole day, if she's planning about the next day, even when you're in bed, she's not going to feel sexually aroused, no matter how much foreplay you try. For a lot of women, sexuality is suppressed, right? We grow up listening that, okay, you don't need to talk about it, or you need to be a virgin, sex is only after marriage, you cannot, touch yourself, or you cannot initiate sex before marriage in this
I'm sure a
phase.
lot of men are just going to say stamina, stamina, stamina in their head at this point of time.
There are a lot of men who think that masturbating a lot can lead to sexual weakness later.
So does that stress affect our sex drive and sex life?
They are very unlikely scenarios, right? A plumber comes to your house and then you start engaging in sexual intercourse.
So daddy issues is a real thing.
Absolutely. And so is mommy issues for boys.
Hello everyone and welcome to The Pleasure Principle, the space where we dive into the soul, science and sass of intimacy and wellness. So grab your cup of tea or maybe a glass of wine or whatever fuels your curiosity, and let's dive deep into the kind of talk we all deserve but maybe never got. It's my pleasure to introduce our expert, Dr. Mansi. She's a psychiatrist with over 10 years of experience. Ma'am, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
The first episode is the pleasure equation, connection between physical, mental and sexual health. I want to start right away with asking, can regular sex or intimacy improve your mood and mental clarity? And what is the science behind it?
First of all, thank you for having me here, and this is a wonderful topic to discuss, and over the course of time we'll realize why. So yes, absolutely, regular sex and intimacy can affect your mental health. Sex is known to boost your pleasure or the endorphins, which are called as the pleasure hormones in your body. It also releases oxytocin, which is a hormone of connection, plus it improves a lot of other physiological functions in your body. And beyond that, sex is something that contributes to emotional connectivity in your relationship and better bonding with your partner. So in general, it boosts your mood and makes you feel better about yourself as well as your relationship.
Is pleasure selfish or is it self-care?
One thing we need to understand that humans are animals which are driven by pleasure. When we are not driven by pleasure, we call it a sign of depression. Self-pleasure is not selfish. It's a form of investment in yourself. It's like looking at a cup. If you cannot pour from an empty cup, unless you're taking care of yourself, you'll not be able to take care of others in your life. And if you're not feeling good about yourself, you're definitely not going to feel good about anything else that you do.
But this cup has a lot of demands. To put it very simply, there are social obligations, there are work obligations. Do you think that often we ignore our pleasure requirements for these obligations?
Absolutely. At a societal level, earlier we used to only look at our physical health, right? Everybody used to talk about physical well-being. We did not talk about mental wellness. Now we are at a stage where a lot of people are aware about their mental well-being and talking about mental well-being. And I'm hoping that the times will turn and we'll start talking about sexual well-being also.
And while we're trying to prioritize all three, there is something which we definitely talk about but don't talk about enough. It's stress. So does that stress affect our sex drive and sex life?
Absolutely. So when you talk about sex, in men and women, both of them, there's something we call as a sexual cycle. So the first step is desire, having the thoughts about intimacy or sexual intercourse. The second step is arousal. Arousal is actually the physiological changes in your body which happen when you're excited sexually. The third thing is orgasm, which is your peak of arousal. And the last is resolution, that is feeling a bit relaxed. So whenever you are stressed out, all four of these get affected. So you might not have thoughts of sex, you might not feel excited even if you're thinking of sex, you might not be able to perform or orgasm, and you might not feel a sense of pleasure. So and again, what happens is that if you're not performing well sexually, it also leads to additional stress on you.
I was just about to say that.
So it's a two-way cycle, but many a times we see that, when we are under stress and, certain life events or certain external factors can affect, your sexual desire and your sexual performance.
It's such a vicious circle because you want to de-stress and probably sex can lead to that, but because you're so stressed, you're not able to have sex and then it gives you more stress.
Absolutely.
According to you, what role does mental health play in experiencing pleasure, sexual pleasure?
If we are not feeling well, if you're not feeling okay in your mind, then it's going to affect everything that you derive pleasure from. One of them is including the sexual intercourse that we're talking about. So mental health needs to be sorted for you to feel good about yourself in your body and to experience pleasure while intercourse, and also to feel good about your relationship. Sex or sexual performance is something that gets affected in almost all psychiatric illnesses or mental health disorders. So that is a very big question that we need to ask when somebody's, not feeling good or not going through a good mental health phase.
What is the one thing that people should start doing to align sexual health, and is it different for men and women?
Absolutely. So I think the most important thing that we need to do is to not look at it in a compartmentalized way. Understand that when you are looking at your physical health, ask yourself, so, what purpose will this serve, this action that I am doing? So if I am working out, right, how does it improve my physical endurance? Plus, how will it help me perform better sexually? Or how does it give me pleasure when I am sexually active in this
I'm sure a
phase?
lot of men are just going to say stamina, stamina, stamina in their head at this point of time.
So I'm hoping that that question comes up a little later. Stamina and size are the two things which are, blown out of proportion and are the least important things for sexual pleasure of your partner, and we'll
Wow.
discuss that. So when it comes to aligning your physical and sexual health, it would be that, kind of look at things in a holistic way. Look at your body as a source of joy. It's not a tool, or it's not just something with which you kind of, serve a purpose. It's something which is meant for your enjoyment also.
It's so amazing that you say that don't look at your body as just a tool, because I think most people just look at their and their partner's body as a tool to reach a certain goal, nothing beyond that.
Exactly. And, when people are struggling with sexual functions and sexual health, we actually advise something we call as sensate focus techniques, where the goal is not to reach an orgasm, where the goal is not to have intercourse or penetrative intercourse. You are just exploring each other's body. You're finding out what you like, you're finding out what your partner likes, and you're reciprocating that. That takes off a lot of pressure of performance, and we see that generally in the male counterparts who are struggling with erectile dysfunction. It takes away a lot of performance pressure, and that kind of actually improves your performance in bed.
Right. That was in fact my next question, that what can two individuals do for their partners to make sex more pleasurable?
So it's a little different from men and women. One thing we need to understand, that men have a lot of spontaneous arousal. So, just throughout the course of the day, they see something or they think of something exciting and they might feel aroused. For women, emotional connection is much more important to feel sexually aroused.
Right.
So for a male partner to kind of, provide for their female partner sexually, one thing would be to take care of her psychological burden or mental load throughout the day. If she's stressed the whole day, she's planning about the next day, even when you're in bed, she's not going to feel sexually aroused, no matter how much foreplay you try or no matter how much, different techniques you try.
Yeah, it's a little difficult to think of the bills you need to pay tomorrow in the morning and feel aroused.
Yeah, it's not even the big things like bills, it's the small things like what time is the maid going to come? What do I need to pack in my children's tiffin box the next day, right? Or, what do I need to do in office the next day?
Yeah.
So the simple small things. So, if the psychological burden is distributed, and if there are acts of kindness and non-sexual intimacy towards each other throughout the day, right? So sending a sweet text to each other, hugging each other, asking each other what kind of a day you've had once you've returned from work, that leads to better emotional connection.
Right.
And for women, it is more, you need to be a bit more reciprocating towards the men when they are sexually aroused to kind of take care of their sexual health. Also, we need to understand that men struggle with a lot of pressure when it comes to sexual performance. So, it's seen as a sign of masculinity or virility if they're not able to perform well. So, they are not so much in touch with their emotions. So, taking care of that aspect sometimes also is required.
All right, this might come as a taboo question to a lot of people, but I want to ask you about solo pleasure and self-exploration. Does it help individuals? Does it help boost self-esteem?
Absolutely. If I'm feeling confident and good in my body, it's going to boost my self-esteem. Also, what happens is, for a lot of women, sexuality is suppressed, right? We grow up listening that, okay, you don't need to talk about it, or you need to be a virgin, sex is only after marriage, you cannot, touch yourself, or you cannot initiate sex before marriage because, your partner is not going to like it, it's going to look that you're too dominating.
Correct.
So that's very different. For men, it's usually associated with a sense of shame and guilt. There are a lot of men who think that masturbating a lot can lead to sexual weakness later, which is a complete myth. It's nothing, not at all connected.
Right.
So self-exploration, when done responsibly and when done safely, is definitely a thing which improves your mood and self-esteem.
Right. So I'm going to ask you a very, very basic difference between what is sexual wellness and how is it more than just sex or the act of intercourse?
Correct. So sexual wellness would include knowing what you like, what you don't like, being aware of what are your pleasures and pleasure principles, being aware of, being able to say yes and no without feeling guilt and pressure. That is one important thing. Being in a consensual relationship or, engaging in consensual relationships and having the ability to say no and feeling safe. So all of these are embodied when we talk about sexual wellness. It also includes, precautions and safeties from sexually transmitted infections, unwanted pregnancies. For women, it's a much more bigger basket.
Yeah.
For men, it also includes, like we were discussing, that it's not just about stamina. So knowing the techniques, knowing that how you need to pleasure your partner and feel pleasured yourself. All of these need to kind of, be a part of sexual wellness and not just the act of intercourse.
There are so many women who suffer from PCOS, PCOD. There are men who have issues like erectile dysfunction. This affects sexual health, obviously, and then I'm assuming it will also affect mental health, right?
So it's like a vicious circle. So PCOD, endometriosis, all affect your mental health independent of your sexual health. So it is known that women who suffer with PCOD and endometriosis could be because of the hormonal changes, could be because of the social changes that happen because of these illnesses. They are known to struggle more with anxiety and depression. And like we discussed that, erection or performing sexually is generally seen as a sign of masculinity and virility for men. If they are not able to perform sexually, it leads to a lot of self-esteem issues, it leads to a lot of self-doubt. So it does affect both mental health and physical health. Also in women, what happens is that with PCOD and endometriosis, there are issues in fertility.
Right.
So, many a times sex is seen as an activity just for procreation. It's not as an activity of, enjoyment. So it's like, if I can't have babies, why should I be having sex? Or I feel guilty about having sex if I'm not being able to produce babies. So that kind of mindset is also something we see in women.
Also, mindset is for the male population, I'm saying specifically, it's also very largely driven by porn, right? The expectations, that also creates pressure in their mind.
Absolutely. So porn is something that leads to very unrealistic expectations with regards to body image, with regards to sexual performance, with regards to sexual scenarios. So if you see, like, they are very unlikely scenarios, right? A plumber comes to your house and then you start engaging in sexual intercourse. So if you're setting these kind of examples for youngsters that this is how sex happens, then it's a very wrong idea, I would believe, right? So you need to understand that consuming porn is okay for pleasure, for arousal, or as a foreplay activity, but you need to understand that those are not realistic scenarios. That's not how it happens in real life, especially with regards to body image issues and sexual performances.
It's also driven by the fact that because we don't get the kind of upbringing that perhaps we deserve, getting attention from anybody becomes like a thing that, okay, at least he's giving me attention.
Absolutely. So that's a very big issue, and we see that very often when we've not had good male father figures in our lives while growing up, that women tend to settle for the bare minimum. They might kind of, find it difficult to step out of unhealthy or toxic relationships, and they're settling just for the bare minimum because that's all that they know. Right. They identify with that, they find it familiar, and that's why they continue being there.
Yeah, so daddy issues is a real thing.
Absolutely. And so is mommy issues for boys.
I want to ask you that, there are times when stress and lifestyle takes a toll and then you're just not in the mood. So what is the normal time that you should give yourself, and it's normal to not be in the mood for how long, and when does it become a problem that you need to discuss with an expert?
Yeah, so it's a very subjective question. There is no specific guideline or timeline as to how long it's okay to be not in the mood, or for how long can you not be in the mood. You need to understand that if you are deriving pleasure from other activities, if you are feeling content, and if you're not sexually active and that's not leading to a problem in your relationship, then it might be fine. It might be due to external circumstances, it might be due to life stages, it might be due to something else. When it starts creeping into your relationship, or when it is that you have the desire but you're not getting aroused, or you're getting aroused but you're not able to kind of enjoy intimacy, or that is leading to problems in your relationship with your partner. Your partner is not satisfied, your partner wants to try something but you are not in the mood. That is a sign when you should reach out.
Any last comments that you want to make which will basically help align physical, mental and sexual health?
Let's start looking at them as one unit, So it's the time of revolution. We are talking about mental health, and I think we should start including sexual health as a part of physical and mental health, definitely.
Thank you so much. We will be coming back with the next episode where we're talking about, does size really matter?
94.3 Radio 1.